Hey scribes, it's Literary Lori, and this is the first edition of BIPOC Book News here on my YouTube channel. And I have three questions for you. One, is the Blacklist going to be a boon or a bust for Black authors? Two, is NaNoWriMo racist? And three, do you have your tickets for the biggest BIPOC Book Weekend of the year? Hey scribes, welcome to the first issue of the BIPOC Book News. I am Literary Lori, and this is a pretty exciting week with a lot of scandal happening in the literary world coming from a BIPOC perspective. So let's get into these stories right away. The first thing I want to talk about is the Blacklist. If you haven't heard about the Blacklist, let me catch you up. People have been sending me this article over and over again this week about this thing called the Blacklist. And the article that everybody was sending me came from the New York Times. Basically, the Blacklist is being heralded as a great way for Black authors who haven't been able to get a publishing deal to get more eyeballs on their unpublished manuscripts. Apparently, the Blacklist was created by this man named Franklin Leonard, excuse me. So he created the Blacklist back in 2005, where screenwriters could publish their screenplays up on this list with the idea that producers, filmmakers could find them there, pluck them out of obscurity, and make their movies. And he thought, well, it was successful for screenwriters. How about we add novelists to the mix? So that's what everybody's talking about. The New York Times did this big article about it, made it sound really good. And let me just quote from that article right now. The article says, quote, aspiring novelists can now post manuscripts on the Blacklist where they can potentially get discovered by the literary agents, editors, and publishers who subscribe to the site. The goal, Leonard said, is to create a new avenue for authors whose work may have gone overlooked because they lack a literary agent or the right industry connections, unquote. That's all from the Times. That's basically what the Blacklist is meant to do for aspiring authors. Now, how does this all work? Basically, the writers themselves, the unpublished authors, they pay a fee of $30 a month to have their unpublished manuscripts up on this site. And for $150, according to the New York Times, authors can get professional feedback on about 90 to 100 pages of their manuscripts. And this feedback is coming from one of the Blacklist readers, okay? And even more generous, apparently, Mr. Leonard, the creator of the Blacklist, has plans to create an unpublished novel award, which will be issued as a grant to authors in several different categories. So children's book authors, mystery writers, literary fiction, romance. There will be a winner in each category for this award. So again, it sounds like a great idea. People are excited about it. The New York Times made it sound like everybody was on board. Agents are excited. Publishers are excited. Writers are excited. It sounds great. The only people who weren't excited about this, can you guess? The commenters on this New York Times article. And I have to say, when I heard this, it sounded too good to be true. And as my mama always said, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But let's take it to the comments. Okay, so here's the beautiful article. It all sounds good. Mr. Franklin Leonard right there, looking very serious with his books. I'm excited. Like I said, this whole article is super positive. But then you see that there's like 74 comments here. And you know what? Most of the people in the comment section, they've got critiques. There's 74 people here who have different things to say, different critiques to add. And reading through those critiques, to be honest, I had some of the same questions that popped up for me. And mind you, a lot of the critiques were actually for the New York Times. They didn't ask a lot of questions. They just kind of made it sound like everybody was on board. But there's some things that jumped out at me right away. The main one being that the whole idea of this blacklist helping authors be discovered makes no sense to me. Basically, the idea that the reason that authors are not getting the book deals that they deserve is because they're not being seen is not going to be helped by adding their name, adding their manuscripts to a list where anybody with $30 a month to spend can be on that list. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm an agent who's already overwhelmed with her slush pile of manuscripts, unsolicited manuscripts, I can't imagine that she's going to think to herself, I know what I want to do with my time, go roaming through an enormous list of manuscripts that anybody can pay to get on and seeing if I can find, the next Jesmyn Ward, the next Colson Whitehead, the next Tia Williams. Like, I just think that agents already have a pretty good way of finding the kind of work that they want. It doesn't really behoove them to go scrolling around on this massive list of people's unpublished manuscripts. And again, anybody can get on there. So I don't think the solution solves the problem. Next, I don't think it makes sense for the writers who literally are unpublished and haven't made money from their novel yet to be paying for it when it's the publishing industry that has money. It's an industry, it's a business. They can have access to all of these manuscripts for free, which I guess is good because you don't want to penalize them to have to look at these unpublished manuscripts. But why are you having the writer who is making no money pay for this service? It feels like it should be the other way around. That's just my personal opinion. Other people have also pointed out that it's unfortunate where writers, we as the artists, have to pay just to get our work seen. And as somebody pointed out in the comments, if you want to pay to get your work seen, why don't you just self-publish your work? There's an idea. If you've tried traditional publishing and it doesn't work, how about you put your money into getting your work seen by perhaps self-publishing it? It's just an idea, it's a thought, but it's more likely that you'll get your work in the hands of somebody who will actually enjoy it by doing self-publishing rather than putting it on a massive list that who knows who's going to read it. And that's another issue of who knows who's going to read it. You're putting your work out there. Doesn't have any copyright protection because it's unpublished. You could pay for copyright, but that's more money. But the idea that all these people reading your work, and there are awful people who really do steal other people's work, and they may not steal your manuscript, but they read a really great idea. They don't remember where it came from, that gigantic slush pile that they read. And the next thing you know, your great idea for a story is being written by somebody else, maybe somebody with more clout, somebody already has connections. And what do you have to show for it? Nothing. So that's what I have to say about the blacklist. Yeah, I would just think about it very carefully as if this is really the best way to spend your money. If you don't care if $30 a month doesn't mean anything to you, maybe, but also consider who's going to be actually having access to your work. So think about it closely, consider the potential harm, consider how else you might spend that $30 a month before you put your manuscript up on the blacklist. All right, that's issue number 1. Moving on. Basically, if you haven't heard about what's happening in the world of National Novel Writing Month, yeah, buckle up, Buttercup. This one's pretty bad. If you don't know what National Novel Writing Month is, basically, it is an organization that was started years ago, like over 20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that brought together people all over the world who wanted to write a book and set the challenge to write an entire novel in the month of November. Thus, National Novel Writing Month literally was the best thing about November since Thanksgiving, okay? So people all over the world would just get ready and they would write their novels together. It was very community focused, very grassroots. They made a platform so that you could sign up. No money was ever exchanged. You signed up, you promised yourself and the world that you were doing it. You got little digital badges you could put on your website. And then they would have meetups in your local area. So like if you lived in Philadelphia or Milwaukee or Berlin, Germany, you could find other NaNoWriMos, that's what we called each other, NaNoWriMos. You could find them and go meet in a cafe and write your little manuscript together. It was so much fun. And also they had Camp NaNoWriMo. They started doing prep for NaNoWriMo earlier in the year, did things for kids. It really grew into this really amazing literary organization that supported writers. So what happened? Well, if the words shit show mean anything, this is where we are today with NaNoWriMo. Let's go to the tape. So this is an article from Wired magazine, and you can see it was written on September 4th, earlier this week. NaNoWriMo organizers said it was classist and ableist to condemn AI. All hell broke loose. Again, let me quickly catch you up to speed. So here you have an organization that's all about supporting writers, about community building, very grassroots. Everybody is allowed. Everybody can be a writer. It just warm, fuzzy writer feelings all around. So much so that some of the most amazing writers have lent their voices to the organization. They offer pep talks during National Novel Writing Month. They sit on the board of the organization. Again, warm fuzzies, writers, we love them all. So what happened? How did this all go down? When did the hell break loose? Apparently, the organizers of NaNoWriMo responded to an innocent question about whether or not it was okay to use AI in doing National Novel Writing Month. In other words, this challenge that says, hey, can you write 50,000 words in a month? Is it okay if I use generative AI to do so? The leadership team at NaNoWriMo apparently said, yes, you can. That caused more confusion, frustration, doubt, and requesting of clarification as to how is it possible that you could have a challenge to see if you could write a novel in 1 month if you can use generative AI to do so? Doesn't that defeat the purpose? Isn't that wrong? And as an organization that supports writers, shouldn't you be a little bit more cautious with the way you support or suggest that generative AI is okay for writers to use? I mean, you're being a little loosey-goosey with your support there for technology that many writers feel is a threat to their livelihood, and rightfully so. There are serious problems with AI in the writing community, and we don't have to get into those now. We can save those for another BIPOC Book News episode. But the point is, people were really questioning NaNoWriMo's not just decision to say it was okay to use AI, generative AI, in their challenge for writing, but that they didn't seem to take any stance to say that actually, yeah, as a writing community, as a writing organization, there are real problems with generative AI in this world. But that's not where the conversation stopped. That's not where the hell broke loose. The hell broke loose when, instead of stopping and saying, you know what, maybe we should consider what we're saying a little bit more before we say anything else. But that's not what happened. Instead, when pressed to really clarify their stance on using generative AI in a writing challenge to see if you were capable of writing 50,000 words in a month, they came back with this comment that it was actually wrong of anybody to question their support of AI use. And not only was it wrong, it was potentially racist, classist, and ableists. Yeah. Think about that. They said in a statement, quote, to categorically condemn AI would be to ignore classist and ableist issues surrounding the use of the technology. And that questions around the use of AI tied to questions around privilege. That was a direct quote from the statement that they made. Now, I have seen the larger statement and what their argument was. And essentially their argument was this, if I might paraphrase, I'm going to paraphrase now. Essentially their argument was people who are less fortunate essentially might need to use AI. And when I say less fortunate, what I mean is those who are differently abled, poor people, or the ethnics, Black people and other people of color and people from marginalized communities who live in worlds where there doesn't exist beta readers or editors, or they're just too poor to find a way to get the help they need to write well. And so they might have to use AI. Yeah. They may have to use AI to make up for their differently abled selves, their poverty, their ethnic background, if you will. So essentially, the leadership of NaNoWriMo put that statement out rather than acknowledge the inherent conflict in supporting generative AI as a writing tool for an organization that supports a challenge to see if you can actually write a book on your own. And what makes this whole thing like the hell is already like it's fraying, it's fracturing, but it hasn't broken loose yet. Why does it break loose? Because it turns out that some of the sponsorship that NaNoWriMo receives is from, can you guess? Did you guess a generative AI company? You'd be right. Yep, that's what it is. So hypocrisy, people, it's hypocrisy. That's what made all the hell break loose. The hypocrisy coupled with the co-opting social justice arguments to support your choice to choose sponsorship over your community or to choose the money over your ethics, basically throw the writing community under the bus instead of dealing with the very real issues inherent to AI and the writing community. So what happened? Well, once people got word that National Novel Writing Month was A, taking money from generative AI companies, B, throwing writers under the bus, and C, pretending that they actually cared about the less fortunate, people just started dropping off left and right. According to this article in Wired, quote, 4 members of NaNoWriMo's writers board, including science fiction fantasy writer Danielle Jose Older and fantasy writer Cass Morris, have now publicly stepped down from their roles in response to the situation. One of the organization's sponsors, Ellipsis, which advertises itself as a principled alternative to Google Docs and is staunchly opposed to the use of generative AI in its products, has officially withdrawn its sponsors. End quote. So you've got board members stepping down and telling all their writer friends to step down and not to have anything to do with NaNoWriMo. You've got their sponsors stepping away from the company. And then you have writers and writer allies saying, this is terrible, and I can't believe that, NaNoWriMo would do something like this, and don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. Even Roxane Gay went on Twitter to voice her disappointment with the organization. Is this really going to be the end of NaNoWriMo? I don't know, but if it is the ending, this will probably be the thing that people refer to as the straw that broke the camel's back. So stay tuned. We'll, keep an eye on this. And now for the positive BIPOC book news for the week. Do you have your tickets for the weekend that is October 18th and 19th? You're saying tickets for what? I'm going to tell you. October 18th and 19th is going to go down as the best BIPOC book weekend of the entire year. Why? Because on Friday, October 18th, it's the Hurston Wright Literary Awards. Yes! The Hurston Wright Literary Awards are like the Black Book Awards. They're the Black Oscars for book writers. They are the awards of the Black literary season. Super exciting. They take place in Washington, D.C. Like I said, on October 18th. There's usually a big gala. There's wine, there's nibbles, there's famous Black authors left and right. It's amazing. And to get a Hurston Wright Award is truly, truly one of the highest awards that Black authors can get. So you can just go to hurstonwright.org and look for the Legacy Awards information. Get your tickets. I checked just a couple days ago and they had early bird prices still, and have you an amazing time supporting this wonderful organization and just having, a fancy night with all of the Black literati. Now, if you got it like that, turn around the next day, get on a plane and fly to Los Angeles, because guess what's happening on October 9th? It is the International Latino Book Awards. Yes. If you didn't know, the International Latino Book Awards is the largest Latino literary and cultural awards program in the United States. Yes. And they celebrate works that portray Latino culture, heritage, and identity. And they recognize authors, translators, and illustrators who write in Spanish, English, and Portuguese. Yes. So that's happening in LA the very next day. So it's going to be a super amazing weekend of BIPOC book excellence being celebrated. If you want to know more about the Latino Book Awards, you can just go to latinobookawards.org. That was easy, right? latinobookawards.org. And again, celebrate these organizations who celebrate us as BIPOC writers. All right, that's the end of this edition of BIPOC Book News for the week that ended September 6th, 2024. I'll see you next time. It's Literary Lori, and I'm out.